Hi. Hi everyone. It's a little after 11:30. I'm finally getting connected for this live video. And I'm going to check in periodically on comments today. I just wanted to kind of touch base on a topic that I mentioned in yesterday's live feed about feeling broken when we were talking about how trauma shows up in the body. And it's probably for the best, because this is a pretty, I guess it's pretty involved topic in and of itself, brokenness. But yesterday, I know I mentioned it and I wanted to elaborate, but kind of got sidetracked, which happens, at least to me. And I think it's, like I said, I think we need to circle back and talk about feeling broken, the brokenness versus wholeness, or feeling whole or complete. And I just want to talk a little bit about my experience with it and how I changed it, and want to talk about it in a practical and realistic way, because what I'm not going to tell you is, you just shouldn't feel that way, because that's not really a thing. I mean, if we could just change, like, if you can't change a feeling, if you can't process and recover from the way you feel, then there is a physiology to it. There's a neural pathway. It's like telling someone to not feel broken is like telling someone who's depressed or anxious, well, just don't feel that way, because you're fine. And that's not helpful. And it can actually add to the feeling of being broken. Like, well, I just can't do it. There's got to be something wrong with me. At least that was my inner dialogue when I felt that way. And would try to make changes that just wouldn't land with me. So I felt broken, I would say, a better part of my life. And I actually thought that I was irreparably broken for a big portion of my life. And back then, I never thought that I would feel or experience a sense of wholeness, of being whole or complete. I thought that I was just a broken person, and that's just, I think I came to accept it. I'm beyond believing it, but just accepting it. And that feeling of being broken, and even my acceptance of it as part of who I am, it was rooted deeply in my old story, like the story of me, the one that was created or developed or written by other people or experiences in my past. And that feeling of brokenness felt like a disconnection from myself. I felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore. Like, I had a distant, vague memory of something that felt authentic and real, but I couldn't connect with that part of me. I couldn't even connect fully with the memory of it. So it seemed like parts of me or aspects of me were actually missing, which of course contributed to the feeling of being unwhole or broken. And it also kind of led me to not really even recognize who I was sometimes when I would look in the mirror, or I would hear myself speaking to other people. Like, I would hear myself say something and think, who just said that? Like, who am I? And let's see. I would say when I started studying energy and anatomy, physiology, body psychology, and quantum healing, and practicing with it more than a decade ago, what initiated me on this journey was, well, it was a health crisis. Technically, it was a physical health crisis, but I had felt broken, and I had suffered from anxiety and depression since childhood. So there were multiple aspects of my broken feeling, and I think by the time it reached my physical body, where I felt like my body was broken, so it just wasn't, the way I think or the way I feel, but it was also my physical body, and it started limiting the way that I could function. Once it reached that point, that's when I started seeking out alternative ways of healing. And not just because of that. I actually went through years of counseling and behavioral therapy, trauma counseling, and when my physical brokenness started becoming a problem in terms of functioning, I saw, and I had to write this down, so I'm going to read it, 12 endocrinologists, 3 urologists, 2 rheumatologists, and I was on multiple pharmaceuticals to try to repair some of my physical brokenness as I perceived it, and I was also on medication for anxiety and depression, and I had a really hard time with medicating myself for that back then because it made me feel more broken. But once I did it, I will absolutely say this: if you need a Band-Aid, if you need a medication to help you feel better and function through the day, there is no shame in that. You should absolutely talk to your doctor about that right now, as quickly as you can. There is nothing wrong with needing some help, whether it's permanent and ongoing or temporary help, whatever's right for you that helps you reconnect with yourself. I highly recommend it. Getting on medication that helped me mentally and emotionally with anxiety and depression is probably the reason why I was able to advocate for myself through so many physical specialists for my physical symptoms and issues. That and the support of loved ones, which I was really fortunate to have. But even with all of the medical and counseling and everything help, I still could not see past all my broken pieces. I still felt irreparably broken. And part of my broken feeling left me feeling unlovable. And even though I could recognize logically that I had community and I had family and I had love and support, I had a hard time feeling it. And that's really a hard thing to process. It really is. So let's see. Once I started practicing energy medicine and studying all these things and working with it for myself, and then eventually working with it with clients, which I've been doing for more than a decade, my curiosity, my observer's mind has really helped, along with my experience and training, kind of get I think what I would call a perspective or a theory about brokenness. And I've seen this not only in myself, but in a lot, if not most, of my clients. And I'm going to kind of back up and kind of give a little bit of background about it. So we're here, and I'm going to start back here and come forward. So I mentioned this in yesterday's talk, that we all function, like all of our systems function dynamically. And that is true of any living thing, really. But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to focus on people, on human beings. And so every person is multi-aspected, having a physical, mental, emotional, and energetic or soul body. And some would even say, and have said, that there are more aspects, more layers of being human. But for the sake of not overcomplicating things in this conversation, let's just work with these four, okay? So physical, mental, emotional, and energetic. So you or I or anyone, any human being, is experiencing the world through all four aspects, not just one. So we think and feel and interact with ourselves, other people, and the whole world on all levels of our being. So everything affects everything. Everything is in communication with everything. Everything processes through every aspect as well. So we are not just our physical sensations or our thoughts or our feelings. We're all of these, and they each affect us dynamically on all levels. Some examples where you can see that dynamic function or dynamic relationship between the different aspects is if you experience a physical abuse or a pain, it can affect your emotional, mental, or energetic well-being. An emotional experience can cause physical symptoms, can cause a plethora of physical symptoms if it's compounded. But even in the moment, it can create a physical symptom like actually physically feeling heartache. Even your tears are a very physical manifestation of your emotions. And what we think about ourselves and our place in the world, so mental aspect, can affect how we feel, our mood, or our emotional aspect. And it can also affect our physicality, such as our posture. So if you think something, if suddenly you're thinking, oh, I can never do that, I'm not good at that, it changes how you feel, and it changes because you're excited about it, and then you don't think you can do it. And so your thoughts affect your mood and even your physical posture. So we also have, of course, mental protections that dissociate under traumatic circumstances so that we can physically survive. And these are just some of the ways you can identify the dynamic function and relationship between all aspects of yourself or any other human being. My theory of brokenness or feeling broken is that some or even all of our aspects, physical, mental, emotional, and energetic, are in misalignment or disconnected in terms of inhibited or cut off communication or connection. Like they're not communicating, they're not in synchronization. They're operating, but they're operating individualistically. They're not operating as a system dynamically the way they're supposed to. And when they are in alignment, there is a greater potential for a perception of wholeness. And when they're out of alignment, there's a greater potential for a perception of brokenness or separateness, a disconnect from the self. So stay with me for just a second longer. Let's see. It's really important that I just interject this really quickly. If you feel broken and you can recognize that there's some aspects of yourself that are not functioning dynamically or communicating the way that they're supposed to, that just means there's imbalance. This is no fault of your own. There's no blame or shame or fault in feeling broken or in being out of balance. These things are a result of your experiences. Each of us we're operating in the results of our experiences, especially our early experiences in life. Those carry with us ongoing until we can address them and shift them and neutralize them. And they're subconscious, they're not operating in our conscious mind. So a lot of the things are outside of our control when we're facing circumstances that require us to make decisions involving survival or even a perceived threat of survival. These these things pattern us on all levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, and energetically. And the physical patterns are the ones that make it so difficult to break the patterns. Because those physical patterns are, it starts off in the energy and then emotion, because energy and emotion are very similar, and then mental, and then physical. So by the time something reaches it and creates a physical pattern, a neural pathway in our nervous system, or a biochemistry of a certain feeling or experience that's been reiterated by feelings, it's so deeply rooted in us that we can't even recognize it. Just like you don't pay attention when your body digests food and you don't notice it, you don't notice these neural pathways that make you feel broken. And that's normal. It just means you're normal. And it's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel. And feeling broken is a valid feeling. Even if others can see your wholeness, it is valid if you cannot. There is a reason for it. There's good news. If you don't want to stay in that feeling of brokenness, you don't have to, because there are ways to disrupt the patterns, not just in the energy, but in all aspects. And by disrupting those neural pathways and energetic and emotional pathways, they're all interconnected, even if they're not functioning as dynamically and optimally as they're supposed to. They can really help you change your perception and shift it, and shift out of that feeling and that pattern, because that feeling is a pattern, literally patterned into your nervous system and your whole body and your whole being. So I am not going to tell you that you can and should just change your mind and change your perception of yourself, that you're whole and you should feel whole, just because I can see that you're whole. And I assure you, if we were face to face and talking right now, I can see it. I know it's there. I know it exists. I do. But I also know that it's actually not possible for you to just change your mind or to shift your perception so that you can experience it. Not until those pathways, those neural pathways, are disrupted. So the very things that created that feeling or perception of brokenness, fragmentation, or disconnection from yourself are the same things that created those pathways and patterns in your energy, emotions, and neural pathways, which are both physical and biochemical, and they affect how you function, operate, process information and emotions, how you perceive yourself and the world, how you're able to recover from big emotions or even physical responses, and how you react or respond to your environment. And your environment includes yourself, relationships with others, how you respond to emotional circumstances, and literally everything in your life. So that means it is very difficult to just feel whole, feel unbroken or complete when your nervous system and your mind and your emotions and your energy are all operating in survival and trauma patterns. But it is not impossible. It is possible to bring all aspects of you back into alignment, communication, and synchronization, so that your physical, mental, emotional, and energetic body disrupt the patterns that keep them disconnected and reset them so that they can function in the most optimal, dynamic way that they're meant to. And it's actually, the benefit isn't just that you feel better, but it's that it's possible to make efforts to shift your your internal dialogue, your internal voice, and to shift your reaction or response behaviors in your relationships or dynamics with others and yourself. And it's also possible to feel physically better, because when you disrupt those pathways, you're disrupting a pattern of primal brain response, fight, flight, or freeze mode, where you're all of your body systems will actually start communicating and functioning better over time. So it's possible that you will think and feel physically and emotionally better when you disrupt those. It's very possible. It's very likely. And I will say this, it's not going to happen like this. It's going to take a little time because it took time to create the patterns. It's going to take a little time to disrupt and recreate new patterns and pathways. But that is where integrated energy healing can help you. It addresses those underlying root causes of that feeling of brokenness, and it facilitates the disruption of those patterns and pathways in your energy, and then integrates that into your nervous system and your whole physical body. So realistically, this process, I'm not going to tell you it's like super simple. I mean, it is to an extent. The process itself that I would guide a person through is pretty simple. There are actions that you would need to do between sessions, and it would probably take more than one session to disrupt that feeling of brokenness, because those are usually pretty deeply rooted feelings. They go back, and it's usually multiple things that have reiterated that feeling, not just one. So 3 or 4 sessions is a good start. I can't say that that's going to be the exact amount for every person, because every person's experiences and perception is completely different and individualized. But that practice that you'll be doing between sessions will just help you shift how you feel and influence how you feel and think and respond. And honestly, it's pretty simple. I like to keep things simple, or I don't do them, just being honest. But if you don't do them at all, then you end up with more or less having some band-aids on how you feel. Okay, there is a process to healing, and it really does involve a little bit of effort and action, but it's simple, focused action, not like big all day long. I don't have time for this action. Like in 5 or 10 minutes a day, you can really do a lot to change your experience if you know the right tools and things to do. So, all right, I've been talking a lot. I'm checking in on comments. Being an easily distracted human being, checking comments distracts me, so that's why I decided to get through this video and then look at comments. I should probably make that my rule, my go-to rule. So I see, hi Jim, hi Peg. So I don't see any questions, but a couple check-ins. So I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for joining me. And I'll tell you what, if this, whether you're watching this live or the recorded version, if this resonates with you and you're curious about how this works, or if it can actually help you, or if it can be integrated with counseling or treatment or whatever you're working with, say through traditional medicine, by all means, please ask. I love answering your questions. So you can email me, you can comment, or you can send a private message on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like this message, please make sure that you like or share it or subscribe so you can catch the next one. And that being said, I hope you have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I will check back in soon. See you later.